Well, the man who led the team who discovered Grace's body was Detective Inspector Scott Baird, and he joins me now live in our Auckland studio. Obviously, a case like this is never over for family members, but is there some sense a weight has lifted today?
Afternoon, Lisa. Yes, absolutely. I've spoken to the family since the sentencing, and they're pleased with the sentence. But once again, it's a step in the process, and they understand they have to go through a process. But now that the court matters are behind them, they can look as a family and their friends, to move on.
There were some very powerful victim impact statements. How are they doing, the family?
Look, as they said, they'll never have Grace back. It's left a huge hole, in Jill's heart and the whole family. There's a piece of that family missing, and that they'll never have. And they'll never be able to celebrate the milestones and create memories with Grace.
I know you take every case seriously, but this case has, it's clearly resonated with you. Why is that?
Look, I think the situation when you have a young English girl who's over in New Zealand on her OE, and Dad arrived in New Zealand, his family, his friends, his support are on the other side of the world. So the police, we were. That all combined, we were his family, his friends, his support. And so it was important for me, leading the investigation, doing all the media interviews, to form a relationship with him, to get him through, because I had to tell him every day before I told the media what was going on.
And most of the time you were telling him bad stuff, weren't you?
Absolutely. There was not too much good stuff that came out.
You're a father too, though. Did you relate to him on that level?
Oh, absolutely. I have a daughter who's in her 20s, so I could empathise. Obviously I've not been through that experience, but I could just empathise with him, because no one wants their children harmed in any way. You live for your children.
So you've touched on this, but obviously Grace's parents sat through some really excruciating evidence. A number of intimate sexual details were made public during the course of that trial, the so-called rough sex defence. What is your view on the use of that defence?
Well, as I said immediately after the sentencing to the media, the defence are entitled to use it, and I understand that, and that probably is from their client using it. But to strangle somebody for 5 to 10 minutes with sustained and constant pressure, that's not rough sex. That's murder. And that's what the jury determined very quickly.
So do you feel that use of that defence amounts to victim blaming?
There certainly is a degree of that. For me, what happened when Grace and the accused got out of his lift that night at about 9:40, and between then and what happened when the accused came out of his room just before 8 o'clock the next morning, all that mattered was what happened in that room. What happens before, what her interests are before that, has nothing to do with that. He strangled her, he murdered her.
So would your preference be, and I know you don't make the laws, but would your preference be for this not to be available as a defence?
Well, look, every accused is entitled to their defence, and they use that. Whether it should be used, that's something that should be debated within the justice system at Parliament level. I just found sitting next to Gillian Millane and David during the trial, and to hear that and to feel Gillian sobbing beside me, having to listen to what no mother or no parent should have to hear about their child who's in their 20s.
You have been involved in a vast number of cases over the years. At the end of this, I am wanting to know, do you have any greater insights into the profile of this killer? What makes him tick? Is he a predator? What did you learn about him?
I've always thought that if it wasn't Grace, it was going to be someone. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't talk about psychological profile, but what we do know is he's a liar. A number of times we proved he lied to the police. He lied to others. So, within his sentence, as we know, there will be counselling available. But, no emotion, And you go, really? When you listen to that family, all the three of them read out their victim impact statements, there was emotion there. Yeah, I felt it. You just feel for that family, but he had no emotion. I looked at him.
So you say, if not Grace, someone else, you think he was going to be a killer?
I think somewhere down the track, and if you'd sat at court and you heard all the evidence and all the witnesses, including some of the witnesses whose names are suppressed, but the evidence wasn't, yeah, at some stage, I think someone else, if it wasn't Grace.
So this came to you as a missing persons case, right? And you get missing persons cases all the time. So at what point did you realise, this is very different?
Well, right from the very start, there were red flags. You have an English girl on her OE, her birthday, and she hadn't been able to be contacted by a family or friends on her birthday, and she hadn't contacted her family or friends. Every day she was in contact, telling them about her experience doing her OE. And then, of course, that was 3 or 4 days later that we were advised of the missing person, and she has not been in contact. They're red flags.
I want to take you back to the day that Grace's body was found, and I've watched your career, I've watched you at media stand-ups. You were composed there, but you were visibly pained. Tell me how that unfolded.
So obviously the investigation team, as long as myself, had worked some long hours in a short period of time. It was fairly intense. The media spotlight and the pressure was really intense from my perspective. I'd been telling a story in the media every day that got sadder and sadder and was leading to what ultimately was her murder and finding Grace. And as part of that, I was talking to Dad, David Millane, every day and advising him before I spoke to the media. And I saw this strong, loving family man crumbling in front of me. And that's hard, And that day, we knew we were digging up the shallow grave, and I'd planned a media conference on Scenic Drive. We'd close the road, put detours in place, for the safety of the police, the public and the media. And it was taking a bit longer to dig the suitcase out. And then we got the suitcase out, the pathologist was there and identified that there was a naked female in the suitcase. I then went from there, within a couple of minutes, found a spot where I could ring the family liaison officer to contact David Millane and tell him that we had found who we believed was Grace. I then had to wait about a minute just to have that confirmed, because I couldn't go in front of the media until I knew he knew. And I basically walked from there out in front of the media in 5 minutes. So no prep, no time to sort of get in the zone and just prep myself and ready. And it was emotional.
It's like you'd taken a punch to the gut.
Not really. It was just, there was a sense of relief. Yes, we'd found Grace. That was important. The whole aim of the investigation was find Grace. But the tragedy around it and dealing with the family and being their only support, particularly David's, and in New Zealand, and there was a connection. I'm a family man. He's a family man. We just connected.
So this whole time you're investigating this and your team is investigating this as a crime, there is a woman at the centre of this, a young woman. Her name's Grace. You never get to meet her. So how do you remind yourself every day that this young woman is what it's all about?
In the investigation, one of the key aspects was you have to have a photo of the victim. It's not a victim, it's not a name, it's a person, a real person who is loved by a number of people. She's got a family. So I wanted the staff, we're working for this victim, so we had a number of photos of Grace on our wall. So every day, this is who we work for, this is who we're looking to find. And every day I have the memorial from the funeral service with Grace's photo on the front in my office. And, that was always a reminder, and a photo of Grace. It was always just a reminder that, we'd had a big job to do. I think the police staff did a fantastic job. The attention to detail around some of that CCTV and the technology work was outstanding.
Yeah, because a lot of this was joining the dots of people's footprints electronic footprints, wasn't it?
Yes, certainly.
So a lot of people meet on apps these days, online. Are there more predators like this guy out there? What do you say to people?
Look, the reality, I think, is, yeah, absolutely, dating apps are out there and people are meeting online, but people meet people in a bar. There's no difference. People just have to be aware of their surroundings, the people they're meeting, and just a bit of that personal safety. But in this case, we know he can talk. We know he could lie and people wouldn't understand. And he obviously lied to Grace, because we know that. And she was comfortable in his company, and he dressed well and all that sort of stuff. But
he was the master of disguise, in essence.
He was, yeah.
So do these cases ever leave you?
Well, another case will come along, and that will become a focus. You don't forget the cases. I can think back to a number of homicide cases I've run where I've dealt with a family, and even this one I had a number of families of homicide victims. The case I've run send me flowers or cards or messages of support during the investigation.
So at the end of this day, do you walk any lighter?
Look, there's a sense of justice has been done for Grace and her family, and that's important. I think the key for me at the start was find Grace, because there's so many families who go through a situation where their loved one isn't found or there's no answers, and they never find out. Here we found Grace. They could have buried her, as Gillian said today. They go to her grave every day and visit her.
Do you think you'll keep in contact with the family?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do get on well, and even since the court case, on a weekly basis, we've had to prepare for the sentencing. I speak to them all the time, or message them, and yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. We do appreciate it. That's Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who headed up that investigation into the murder of Grace Millane.